much different than what we're reading. Prabhupada is saying things like, well, there's no difference between being with the Guru and not being with the Guru. And we're thinking, yes, there is. There's a big difference. And I also experienced that difference when I was with Prabhupada. We all did. You experienced that difference whenever you're with any advanced devotee, not just your spiritual master. But one of the things that Prabhupada said that I think is important for us to understand, there are many things, but one thing that stood out in my mind is that Prabhupada said, the physical presence is sometimes appreciable or not appreciable. And that means sometimes you have it and sometimes you don't. But the words of the spiritual master are always appreciable. In other words, you always have them. And so you can always depend on the words. So if you depend on the physical, as we've discussed, if you depend on the physical presence only, obviously that's not going to work because you don't always have it. And so in the absence, and then Prabhupada, you may remember Prabhupada said, when the spiritual master is present, you should serve him physically, obviously, if you can. And when he's not present, you serve him through his Vani. Of course, even when he's present, you serve through the Vani, but specifically, Prabhupada's making the point that, as I said, the Vani is always there. And there is a human tendency to think that the last thing the Guru said, or the latest class you heard, that's the most important and relevant, and kind of dismiss earlier classes. Have you ever done that? Like, oh, we have to go to today's class. This is about today. I mean, sometimes it is, but you know what I'm saying. It seems like the latest thing we hear is most relevant. And then sometimes you'll hear from a Prabhupada disciple who will be saying something like, today I was hearing from Srila Prabhupada and he said, and you think, and I don't know if you've ever heard someone say that, and I don't know if you ever thought, what does he mean? Like he saw Prabhupada today? But because the way he says it is if, this morning Prabhupada was here and I heard the class. And the reason is because for us, that's the only way we can relate to Prabhupada. So we try to take it in the present tense. Yeah, I was hearing Srila Prabhupada today. Prabhupada said 50 years ago, he said this, but that was 50 years ago and today's today. And so that may not be relevant. If you think it, Prabhupada said 50 years ago, he can come across, or he can make us feel like that's less relevant than what's being said by someone else today. Whereas you take it like, as I said, devotees say, oh, Prabhupada was saying, today I was here, Prabhupada, he was saying. It's like, oh, really? Prabhupada was saying today. Okay, that's nice. So that's the way Prabhupada wants us to take it. And so when we're talking about the words of the spiritual master as being non-different, our philosophy is Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. You know what that means. It's non-different, but it's different at the same time. So something can be non-different and different. So, okay, there's no difference between the physical presence of the Guru and the Guru, except you're all thinking, yes, there is. There is a difference. And that's the simultaneous oneness and difference. There isn't a difference because the real presence of the Guru or the Sadhu is by vibration, what he says. So whether he says it in front of you or away from you, there's no difference. But we all know in the presence of a devotee, as one Guru said, he said, well, you can say the Bhagavatam is also the Guru. The Bhagavatam is, in the Bhagavatam it says it's the literary incarnation of Krishna. So the Bhagavatam is Krishna. Like, okay, I was reading Bhagavatam and I fell asleep. How is it Krishna? It's kind of and so this one devotee was saying, it's a passive guru, where when the guru is alive, he can grab you by the ear and pull you, like, don't do that. I guess maybe in India, that's what they would do in schools, pull the kid by the ear. So anyway, in other words, the guru is in front of you and you can say, don't go there. Stop, pull you, right? Pull you away. Stop. And the Bhagavatam is passive. It can't do that. You have to do that to yourself. So obviously when the guru is there, he can pull your ear or pull your arm. We would say in the West, pull your arm, force you to do something you don't want to do and push you and shoot arrows into your heart and kill all the demons in your heart and so forth. So this discussion is not to minimize that, but it's also meant to help us understand that since we are not always in the physical presence of our spiritual master, we will need to realize that presence is available through the vibration and through the service. And as we had discussed, I think we discussed this, I can't remember, but I think you all understand the principle of separation in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It's such a high thing because love increases in separation. And the more you're separated from a person, the more you tend to think of them. And so that's why separation is exalted. So it's like we don't like separation, but often it's in separation that we come closer to someone. And as I said many times, especially for disciples of gurus who have left, or disciples of Kadamba Swami, that they will get very close to their guru after he leaves, or those who have gurus who have left have become very close to their guru in ways which are different than when the guru was present. Obviously, it has to be. And over time, as the years go by, often you tend to forget a person, 50 years later. With Prabhupada, is 45 years. 45 years later. So you tend to forget. I mean, in ordinary life, my father died. Yeah, my mother died a year before Prabhupada died. So that's 46 years, so it's like, I haven't seen her in 46 years. It's not like I think that much about her. It's a long time. But if you ask disciples of Prabhupada, they'll say, no, I think more about Prabhupada now than I did after he left, or 10 years. Like every year, it's more, because when the person is important to you, then obviously you think of them and you want to think of them more. And the more, and usually with time, as your relationship develops in a transcendental way, that relationship becomes more important and more important and more important, and therefore more you feel closer, and there's more thinking like that. Yesterday I was reading a letter. Just hold on a second. I think this letter is relevant. I have to get my phone. Don't go anywhere. Oh, you can go to the bathroom if you want, get some water. That's okay, but I'll be right back. This is this is a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote. I'm here with my sister. It's just Los Angeles, and we went a few days ago to our old neighborhood, and it's so unfortunate because my father sold the house, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, it's about 25-minute walk and a 5-minute drive to the temple where we grew up. And we were lamenting, crying. Why did he sell the house? Could have been by the temple. Hare Krishna. So many things to lament about, right? That was my lamentation this week. I lament about it often. Anyway, we have to fight in spite of our lamentation. So here's a letter. This is about Prabhupada's explaining about connection with him and explaining about initiation. This is such an important letter, and it's relevant to some of the questions that were asked on Friday as well. Someone's asking Prabhupada about getting initiated. And Prabhupada said, you'll be initiated. Any one of you, when you agree to follow the regulative principles, and you are recommended by our men, then you can also be initiated. Initiation is a formality. First of all, you have to decide whether you will abide by the rules and regulations and become Krishna conscious. The first thing is, when Prabhupada says formality, it means that that's not the essence. The essence of the relationship is not the formality. Like, when you get married, it's not like something's going to change drastically on your wedding day. If you had a good relationship before you got married, it will continue. If you had a bad relationship, the bad relationship will continue. The marriage ceremony itself is not going to change that. But the marriage ceremony, in theory, is meant to formalize a good relationship, an existing relationship. Like I was telling you that story, some movie where a girl's supposed to get married and the guy needs to get married to get an inheritance. And he doesn't have anyone to marry, and her fiance didn't come to the wedding, so those two other people get married and say, well, it's convenient. I need to get married to get this inheritance, and your fiance stood you up, so why don't we get married? That's awkward, right? You went to go to get initiation, and your guru didn't show up, but another guru showed up. And then you say, well, could you initiate me? Because my guru's not here. But you don't have a relationship with that guru, right? So, initiation is a formality. First of all, you have to decide whether you will abide by the rules and regulations and become Krishna conscious. In other words, duty of the disciple. You're going to take a vow to follow these rules. You have to decide if you're going to follow them. This is your consideration. You have to decide for yourself whether you're going to take this Krishna consciousness seriously. That is your decision. Initiation is a formality. If you are serious, that is real initiation. Wow, did you hear that? Should I read that again? If you are serious, that is real initiation. In other words, Prabhupada's saying, will you follow these rules? So if you're serious, it means, yes, you will follow them. You're committing. And so once you commit, that's the initiation. People will say, like, will I ever get initiated? When will I get initiated? And Prabhupada's saying, if at that point when you're committed, this is what I'm going to do. You're actually, and that's the essence. When he said the real initiation, in other words, it's the essence of it. Not that, well, nice to get a spiritual name and, belong to the group. So I'll sit in and, I'll get a guru. Which guru? I don't know. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger by the toe. Anyone, just somebody, like I need to get a spiritual name. I need to be initiated. And I understand very clearly that there's an anxiety that if I'm not initiated, then I'm not going to go back to Godhead. So there's sometimes a fear that how long can I wait? I heard now Radhanath Swami is he's not initiating as many devotees as well, maybe quickly as before, and some people have to wait. And so naturally there's a concern. Well, will I get initiated? What's going to happen if I'm not initiated? Will I perish like a rent cloud without any direction? It's not exactly like that. It can seem like that if you have a very literal understanding of Shastra. So Prabhupada's broadening that understanding. Prabhupada's giving the backstory of initiation here, so to speak, because in the Shastra it says, if you need to be connected through initiation, which is true. Now Prabhupada's really defining what it is. And by defining what it is, he's saying, in a sense, once you make this commitment, you're obviously to a guru, commitment to yourself, to Krishna, you are initiated. That's the essence. So, and he goes on to explain it. If you are serious, that is real initiation. If you have understood this Krishna philosophy, and if you have decided that you will take Krishna consciousness seriously and preach the philosophy to others, that is your initiation. So again, you're going to dedicate yourself to the principles. So that's your initiation. My touch is simply a formality. So Prabhupada's saying, real initiation is accepting the principles. My touch is, okay, we'll formalize it. Like, when you get married, at least in America, you get a marriage certificate. So you go to some city or state department and you say, we want to get married, and they make out you take an oath or something, I forget, and you sign a paper and you have a marriage certificate. Whoop-de-doo, now you're married. It's a piece of paper, like. That's not really it. I don't think that does it, right? I mean, we're seeing today, even a big wedding is not always going to do it. So if the real thing is, are you committed? Like, I don't think there's statistics that the more expensive weddings, there's less divorces than the cheaper weddings. Maybe, but I don't think there's necessarily a correlation. But there would be a correlation between those who are dedicated to make the marriage work. Wouldn't you think? Those would be the most successful rather than the most elaborate weddings, or whatever factors there may be. The commitment is the major factor. So that's basically what Prabhupada's saying. My touch is simply a formality. Okay, listen to this. It is your determination that is initiation. Wow. It is your determination that is initiated. So it's like Prabhupada saying, you're initiating yourself. It's almost like he's saying, I can't initiate you. I can just show up and sign the paper. But if you two guys are not committed, it's my signing the paper isn't going to do it. And that's why many times I told that story of these disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta who a few months after initiation left, and Bhaktisiddhanta was told, 2 of your disciples have left. And he said, they're not my disciples. They were never my disciples. So even though he did the initiation, because he felt or understood, they never really accepted their vows, then he said, even though they sat in the fire sacrifice, they were not initiated. So we generally don't say, okay, because you are committed, and Prabhupada said it's just a formality, you're already initiated, you don't have to be, don't worry about it. We don't say that. But, what you'll find as you progress in Krishna consciousness is that to advance in Krishna consciousness, you always have to more and more understand the essence of things, because it's very easy to understand things only externally, the way it shows up. And even the externals will change over time. Cultures change, devotees change, management changes. Krishna consciousness is different in different countries. So you always want to try to understand what is the essence of whatever it is. What's japa? What's the essence? Like our japa workshops, it's all about what's the essence, isn't it? Like going from maybe a very academic or technical understanding, or even a lack of understanding, and just thinking it's just a process, or just 16 rounds is bingo, magic number, 16 rounds, you get a free ticket back to Godhead. Just get your rounds done somehow or other. So a lot of us thought like that. But when you understand the essence, then that's when you actually connect deeply. So, but everything that we are learning and everything we're doing, we really want to try to understand essentially what is this. Like, okay, take Bhagavad Gita. You know, some of you know that many times when people say, like, what is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita? And I say, basically, Krishna's invitation inviting you to dance and trying to convince you that dancing with him is better than dancing with Maya. That's basically what it is. Now, you can have an academic understanding, but if you take that understanding and put it behind every verse, then you actually understand the Gita. There's a lot of people who don't understand that. So that's that. So in reading the Gita over and over again, we're trying to understand what is the essence. Reading Bhagavatam over and over again, what is the essence? And we come to understand it's all about love. It's all about Radha's mood, pure bhakti, the gopis, their mood, understanding. Like, okay, well, what about Prahlad? What about all these other things? It's purifying us. It's leading us. It's helping us understand what is pure devotional service. Okay, so now I understand Bhagavatam. Then everything makes sense. So it's the same thing with initiation. If it's just an external ceremony, the divorce rate is pretty high in the world, and the initiation divorce rate is probably coming a close second to that these days, right? If you take it and you haven't made the commitments yourself internally. Does that make sense? Okay. So getting back to this dilemma of how I'm to understand Prabhupada's instructions that the words of the Guru, that is the best association when we feel it so much more in the physical presence of the Guru. And so all I can say is, I can express what I've always tried to do. Sometimes I'll read something Prabhupada says and I'll say, but that's not my experience. Have you ever read something that Prabhupada said and said, but I don't understand that because I don't see the world that way. And so point number one, I'm not Prabhupada, so yeah, I don't see it that way. It's not his fault that I don't see it that way. It's my fault. And it's not a fault with what he said, it's a fault with how I understand it. So we have to start with that premise. And so when we start with that premise, then when Prabhupada says something, then we think, I don't understand this, or it doesn't make sense to me, or I look out the window and it doesn't seem that way. So am I misunderstanding something? How am I meant to understand this? That's the way we see it. And we try to look at it that way. And we can admit, I don't understand. We can admit, I don't see it that way. I don't feel it that way. I don't understand it that way. I don't relate to it that way. Now, in some cases, it may be that Prabhupada's describing some cultural aspect of Varnashram or the Vedic world, which is not relatable to us exactly. It has to be adjusted, and he was not intending that we would do something like that, or maybe testing it out, see if it works. There are things like that. But in regards to what we're talking about now, when Prabhupada says, there's no difference between the words of the Guru and his presence, or worse, the words are better than the presence, then we sit back and say, not to me. Now what do I do? I don't want to doubt Prabhupada, but we understand, okay, that's the level I'm at. That's my experience. But it doesn't invalidate what Prabhupada's saying. It's just saying, I'm not there yet. Okay, that's fine. I'm not there yet. I need that. You may remember, long ago, I told you a story about a devotee when he was very young. He went to Germany. Some eras from Germany. If this devotee didn't go, maybe you would never be a devotee. Who knows? He went to Germany, must have been 1969. His name was Hansaduda. He was born in Germany and he came to America, I think, when he was like 8 or 12 years old, and then became a devotee in New York. And then he came to Berkeley, and then that's where I joined. So he was there when I joined it then. Maybe it was, no, it wasn't 1969. It was sometime in the middle of 1970, he left Berkeley to go to London and Germany, and he started the temple there. So he probably became a devotee in 67, 68. Probably at that time, he must have been like 30 years old, 29, 30, which I considered really old because I was 19. If you remember when you were 19, 30 was like, that was like pretty old. So I thought like, he's an adult. He's like a grown-up man. And I had a lot of respect for that. And he'd been a devotee when I joined. He had been a devotee 3 years, which was a long time then. So he was 30 and been a devotee 3 years. I had utmost respect for that. So after 3 years as a devotee, 30 years old, 29, whatever, he went to Germany. Jagold, Germany. He went to Germany. Wunderbar. Is that how you say it? Wunderbar? Yeah. All I can say is kleine Spende for the kleine Kinder. That was our Sankirtan line. A little donation for the little kids. Kleine Spende for the kleine Kinder. We were rascals. We'd say anything. So what happened was he went there, and you might imagine if you're just going like a few devotees to a new country, could you imagine? Like, we send you off. Okay, Samira, we're sending you off to a city and a country where there's no devotees, and you and Chaitanya Dasi and Nadia, you're all going to start a temple, and we send you with like zero money. It's just like, well, what do we do? Just figure it out. We wouldn't just send 3 women like that. We'd send some men. So very difficult service. And he tells his story that Prabhupada would write him a letter every week. And the letter would inspire him for 6 days. And as you know, there's 7 days in a week. And so he'd get the letter actually on the 8th day. So let's say he would get the letter Monday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. He'd be good. The letter would inspire him. By Sunday, he'd sleep all day. He was like, lose his enthusiasm. And then Monday, he'd get the next letter and it'd fire him up. And this went on for like months. Like he depended on that letter. Like he couldn't make it without that letter. There you go, everyone. Prabhupada was not there, but his words were so powerful that they kept him going. So sometimes, I have another story. One of our godbrothers, I think he might have been like 18 years old when he went to South Africa with some devotees. They were the first devotees in South Africa. And somehow or other, all the devotees he was with just flaked out and left, and he was the only one in South Africa. Alone, 18 years old. Could you imagine? You want to try it? Well, you're older than 18. You can't try it. So, all right, try it at your age, see how it works. And so he wrote Prabhupada a letter, like, what should I do? Should I leave? And Prabhupada said, no, stay. Krishna will take care of you, etc., etc. So he said that instruction from Prabhupada, like, stay there, stay in South Africa. That was like it, that just kept him going and going and going. So you see what I'm saying is like when a disciple takes an instruction deeply into the heart, then that instruction can keep them going, just as if the spiritual master were there pounding on the head with a hammer. Surrender, surrender. So we don't want to underestimate the power of those instructions when they enter a fertile heart of a devotee, how they can cause a devotee to do miraculous things. And we saw that with Prabhupada. His instructions created miracles in the lives of his devotees. When Prabhupada left, as you know, the movement was young, the devotees were young, and Prabhupada wanted the devotees to take up the service of guruship, which was pretty impossible, but they were willing to try. In your right mind at 27, 28, you've been a devotee 7, 8, 9 years, and Prabhupada goes to take up disciples. That's like kind of crazy, but that was Prabhupada's instructions. Some were able to do it, some were not able to do it. But the point was that I think they all felt this is a mammoth task, but Prabhupada wanted it, so we'll try our best, we'll do it. Or Prabhupada had given sannyas to young men, like that's also another mammoth task. 2 years ago, you're attending every rock concert in America, smoking every variety of marijuana, hashish you can, having relationships with every girl possible. And 2 years later, you join ISKCON, the day after you've been doing that for since you're 15. 2 years later, you're given a danda, you're a sannyasi. That was happening. That's it's a big surrender. Some of those devotees didn't make it, we know, but some did. And the ones that did obviously had some samskars, but they took that order deeply in their heart. And that order was able to push them even through today, far after Prabhupada is gone. That order is what empowers them. So that's Prabhupada's point. And what better example do we have of Srila Prabhupada, 1922? He meets his guru. So imagine you're like a brand new bhakta or bhaktin. You come to the temple, right? And we'd like you to meet, so-and-so Maharaj, he'll inspire you. And he asks who you are, what do you do? And you say, well, I am from this remote country, in the middle of somewhere, middle of nowhere, there's no devotees there. And the Maharaj says, you should go start a temple there. You should go preach there. You're just there your first day of the temple. Now, we all know what happened. That instruction went deep into Prabhupada's heart, like really deep, right? And what did Prabhupada say? Because he always talked about that instruction. So what did he say? He said, I never forgot that instruction, right? I never forgot it. So when Prabhupada executed that instruction, it was in 1965. So we're going from 1922. If we do the math, it's 43 years. That's like, it's really easy for an instruction to fade away 43 years later, isn't it? It's pretty easy for instruction to fade away a few weeks later. Sometimes it's easy to fade in a few hours after class. You go to class and I see you and I say, how was class? And you'll say, it was amazing. I'm really inspired. Say, what did he say? And then you'll think, can't really remember what he said, but I know it was inspiring. So sometimes we have that experience. We forget immediately. What to speak of holding on to an instruction long enough to be able to execute it or write it down. So now, what Prabhupada did is phenomenal. So it's phenomenal. It shows that if a disciple takes an instruction deeply, then it's not about being in the personal presence. Like Prabhupada didn't need the personal presence. He just needed the instruction. So, there's a purport this is amazing purport in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It gets a little political, but the reason Prabhupada put these purports in there, in his own words, he said that he was trying to teach us what mistakes we shouldn't make by teaching us mistakes that his godbrothers made. Not all of them, but some of them. He said, they did this, which is like, don't do that. See that car? It's going left? Don't go there. That's not, go straight. So it's like that. I'm giving Hemant directions in India. I'm going to give him directions. That would be funny. But if I knew the directions he didn't, and the car was going the wrong way, so you see where that car is going? Don't go there. Go off to the right there. So Prabhupada would do that with Gaudiya Math, use the Gaudiya Math as an example in some cases of mistakes that were made that we shouldn't follow. So he gave an example that sometimes temples can be used not only as ashrams, but also as businesses. They can make money. People will visit, they'll give donations to the deities, they'll buy prasadam, they'll buy paraphernalia, they'll buy books, or they'll give bigger donations. And if your temple is famous because it's at the spot of something, some tirtha, the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, or where this sadhu did his bhajan, then more people will come. And even sometimes apparently stories are made up. Oh, this is the place that this happened. So the temple becomes famous, more people come, more money is made. And so if you know the story, Prabhupada said that after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left, I don't know how long after, but at a certain point there was a split, and then there was different devotees gravitating to obtain various properties of the Gaudiya Math, and they went to court fighting. Because if you ever read the purport, Prabhupada will say, 50 years later, they're still in court. I mean, Indian courts are pretty slow, I guess. Or the case is difficult, or both, and they haven't resolved it at the time Prabhupada wrote that, like in the early 70s. So, and then he said, some of them were able to acquire those properties. And he said, so we do not try to enjoy the property of the spiritual master. And then more or less what Prabhupada was saying is, the real wealth of the spiritual master is not the property. The real wealth of the spiritual master is the instruction. So Prabhupada would say, they got the property of my guru, and I got the instruction. And the instruction was more valuable. Because he was saying they were concerned more with the property, and I was concerned more with spreading Krishna consciousness, with preaching. Because that was the desire of Bhaktisiddhanta. So you could say, I got the real wealth, because the real wealth is the instruction. And the real wealth manifests when you actually get access to the real wealth when you execute the instruction. So personally, this story of Prabhupada makes a very deep impression on me in light of the fact that instructions seem to get dusty and rusty, if you know what I mean. Don't they? Older instructions seem to get rusty and dusty. Oh yeah, I remember reading this, like 10 years ago. Something about something. So it shows something about the guru-disciple relationship that we can all learn. How serious Prabhupada was about that. And that was the first instruction he got. Somebody could write that off and say, he didn't even know me. He gave me instruction. Who does he think I am? I can't do that. That's ridiculous. I can't do that. I'm a grihasta. And if he processed that instruction that way, nobody would say that was a problem. Everybody would say, yeah, of course, How could he expect you to do that? You're a grihasta. Who are you? Who are you? What qualification do you have? And then these other godbrothers go to London and they fail, and Prabhupada could think, yeah, of course, they're sannyasis and they fail. What about me? What can you expect? I'm not going to do it. He couldn't be serious. It must just have been a euphemism, or it must have been just some encouraging words, go out and preach. You're just trying to encourage me that I'm smart. He didn't take it that way. So look, it's a beautiful meditation. The instruction that Prabhupada got in 1922, it was like more powerful in 1965 than in 1922. You could say, right? It was more activated. So that example shows us that, a guru could be right behind you with a paddle, paddling you and whipping you with a whip. As Prabhupada used to say, I'm whipping you to distribute books. So we're going to stand behind you and whip you. Distribute books, distribute books. Distribute. No, I can't distribute books. It's too hard. Distribute books. Such a hassle. Distribute books. I don't feel like it. Distribute. Like whipping. But for a pure devotee, one instruction is all the whipping he needs. That's it. Prabhupada whips himself. He lets that instruction whip himself continually. So it's such an amazing example of what we're talking about, of the power of instruction. And this is Srila Bhakti Siddhanta leaves in 1936. So we're talking now 29 years after his departure. Gaudiya Math has divided, it's lost its former position and prestige. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of factions have developed. In spite of all that, no excuses, Prabhupada holds the instruction. That instruction is vital. That's the day he got it. So that's really important. And that, I think, shows where Prabhupada says there's no difference between the instruction and the physical presence. And then we had talked and given the example that Prabhupada often gives of, you want the association of your guru, but a mosquito, he also has the association. He's on the lap of the guru. And Prabhupada said, but what is he doing? Simply biting the guru, So you might be on the lap of the guru and just biting him. It's not like that's a guarantee anything good is going to happen. Yeah. Yes. So, one thing you learn from this story, or another thing you learn from this story, and you learn from the story of Rupa Goswami when he wrote on a palm leaf a verse that revealed that he understood the heart of Mahaprabhu. And his prayer, Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam, when will I understand the mind and desire of Mahaprabhu? Is that the devotee understands, or is meant to understand deeply, the heart of Prabhupada, the heart of his guru, the heart of Mahaprabhu, the heart of the acharyas. Like, what is the essence? And when we try to understand what is the heart, then when we get the instruction, that instruction, because we're trying to understand it more deeply, that instruction empowers us. And we don't think, I can't do that, that's too hard, that's ridiculous, it's not practical. We just try to enter the heart of that instruction and then do whatever we can do, even if we think we're not qualified. That's what it means. That's what it means to be connected to one's guru, and as we're saying, and connected to Prabhupada, because there's no restriction. When I say guru, I mean Diksha, Siksha, Srila Prabhupada, our Parama Guru. It's all transcendental. It's beyond 3 dimensions. So that was my 45-minute introduction to today's class, which I want to end in 13 minutes because I'm preparing for this course that we're giving this weekend, which is going to be amazing. You have to attend that course. If you haven't registered, you should register. Yeah, it's really nice. What's nice about the course is it teaches things that, some things which sound almost like they're secular ideas, but then we show how they, 2 things, either they're talked about directly in our scriptures, but maybe like in a camouflage way that you will now understand more what the scripture is saying. And sometimes in a broader context, it's a general idea. And although this idea may sound secular, we're talking about challenges we all face and ways in which to face them. So It can be quite powerful to be in a mentality where we value taking care of our spiritual lives, which we value it as a service, as a duty, as a mentality. And our activities reflect that value in how we take care of ourselves as servants of Krishna, as possessions of Krishna, and that we love ourselves as we love other devotees, which for some devotees is really difficult. Like, some devotees are really nice to other devotees and really mean to themselves. Have you seen that? Like, some devotees treat themselves in ways that would never treat even their enemy. Sometimes. Today I was doing the PowerPoint, and I was choosing some pictures, and there's one picture where this man has a little man on his shoulder pointing at him and yelling at him, and that little man is him. It's just a small picture of him. And part of the impetus to do this class was that it can seem, if we're not careful, it can seem that our philosophy is actually telling us to do that, like berate yourself. That's humility. That's what you should do. And I understand there's confusion there, and I think part of the confusion is we don't know the difference between genuine humility and shaming and self-contempt. One is tamasic and one is transcendental, and we conflate the two. Another problem is we think that how can you improve unless you beat yourself up? Like beating yourself up is the way to get better. But actually, it's the way to get worse. It just makes you worse. Being strict with yourself is good. Beating yourself up is not. They're two different things. And we conflate those also. I think, if I'm nice to myself, I'll just eat chocolate and ice cream and cake all day and get up at 9:30 in the morning. That's what I'll do. No, that's a misunderstanding. Yeah. If I'm nice to myself, I'll get up for Mangalarti. That's what I'll do. That's proper. That's, if I love myself, that's what I'll do. Right? I mean, that's the way we have to contextualize it. So I think this class is important to clarify those misunderstandings. And in my study of this, which I've studied a lot of it basically by counseling devotees. That's where I've learned a lot about it, by trying to understand devotees' minds, what they're thinking, and trying to help them. And by doing this repeatedly, it became very clear to me that things like self-acceptance and self-compassion and self-love, which seem, number one, maybe not to be part of our philosophy, seem, number two, maybe self-indulgent, very selfish, are actually platforms from which, or platforms we need to be on to progress in spiritual life. And the self-condemnation, being super hard on ourselves and like that, they are counterproductive to going forward. It's just, we're just minimizing ourselves, we're bashing ourselves. And so there's this confusion, but isn't that humility? Isn't that what you do? Isn't humility beating yourself up? Many of us are not healthy mentally or psychologically. So if we try to imitate the acharyas, I'm so rotten and miserable and this and that, it just backfires us and throws us into tamaguna. And in tamaguna, that's, you lose all your energy and impetus. And if it's obvious, these acharyas who are giving us these prayers are manifesting this humility like you've never seen humility on that level before. It's obviously not of this world. It's not in the modes of nature. It's coming from a very transcendental place. It's coming from love of Krishna, which therefore can only be stimulating one's relationship with Krishna, not discouraging one. But our so-called humility, when it turns into an unhealthy way of dealing with ourselves, it just discourages us. Like, what's the use? I'm so fallen, right? So, you know, the prayers of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says, you know, like, I'm so bad when I see other people happy, it makes me sad. When I see them sad, it makes me happy. You know, he's saying things like that. And you might think, you know, if an ordinary person read that, they would think, well, this person's really bad, right? Because that's what it sounds like. And you would think with a prayer like that, the end of the prayer, the conclusion would be, well, I guess I need to go to a mental hospital because I'm really messed up, right? But the conclusion of those prayers is, Krishna, please give me your mercy. You know, it's all about Krishna. It's all inspiring bhakti. It's inspiring getting closer. It's not, oh, well, Bhaktivinoda science is, what's the use? I give up Krishna consciousness. I'm so fallen. His prayers of humility don't end like that. That's how our prayers sometimes end. Like, what's the use? You ever feel like that? Like, what's the use? I'm so fallen. What's the use? And Bhaktivinoda, you know, his humility is like, oh, Krishna, give me a drop of mercy. I need it so badly. Please help me. It's I want you so much. Whereas if we're not in the right consciousness, then that self-condemnation just destroys the desire for Krishna consciousness. It makes us kind of feel like hopeless or useless. You know, we have this concept in bhakti that I am worthless. Worthless, that's a textbook definition of low self-esteem. So then you're thinking, how am I supposed to feel worthless? But it's a manifestation of a high level of humility. Like, what is my worth to Krishna? You know, what is my banana that I offer? You know, what is all this service that I offer to Krishna? It's nothing. What can I give to him? He's God. And, you know, not like I am at the core, rotten to the core. That's not how they're feeling. It's just feeling like, what is my value, Krishna? And so Prabhupada said, when you feel that way, you come to Krishna crying, please accept this service. That your bhakti is just like, it grows. What is the value of what I offer? What is the value of this body? It's 93 cents. With inflation, it might be up to $2.25 or something. I don't know what it is now. What is the value of this body? What is the value of what I had? For you, it's of no value. But so therefore I beg with tears in my eyes, you please accept this offering. That's the worthlessness. That's how worthlessness is meant to inspire bhakti. But taken in the wrong way, it's just like, I'm worthless. What's the use? I give up. Send my beads back to my guru with a letter. I'm finished. You know, I give up. So I think these things are important to distinguish because it's quite common to want to give up, and, you know, an unhealthy mentality mixed with a misunderstanding of philosophy can explode and throw us into tamagun. And you've probably all seen this in your own life or the life of others. Haven't you? Have you seen it? And mix in a little Maya, whose job is to discourage us, and then you get a disaster. You get a whole pot exploding, you know, atomic weapons, exploding the creeper in your heart. So what we learn in this course, this is my advertisement for this course. I guess you have to like edit this and put it on YouTube. It'll be a good advertisement. The beautiful thing that you learn in the course is all the things that Prabhupada said, believe it or not, about loving yourself. If I say you should love yourself, you're like, well, you know, what psychology book are you reading? I go, no, I can quote Prabhupada saying that. I can show you where Prabhupada's saying that. And I think we all know, anyone who's been around a while, we all know that Prabhupada has said many things about taking care of your health. I hope this meets you in good health. Health first, sadhana second, service next. If you don't take care of your body, it belongs to Krishna. How can you do service? I mean, these are like common sense things, right? So like, oh, it's okay to take care of myself. Yeah, it's not okay not to. And in fact, you're not going to make progress if you don't care enough about yourself to care for your bhakti. If you don't care, that's tamaguna. I don't care. That's what tamaguna is. So we need to care. And then the big one, I think this is the real big one that we're going to get into, which is extremely important and extremely interesting. It's about self-acceptance, because the idea of self-acceptance goes back to the idea I was saying before. If I say, well, if I just accept myself, that means I become apathetic. Like I'll just, oh, it's just the way I am. I just eat chocolate at midnight. I can't change. So, I'll just put a little ice cream with the chocolate and just like whatever. That's the best I can do. And I hope my guru understands. Self-acceptance isn't like that. Self-acceptance, we think self-acceptance, or many of us think self-acceptance denotes apathy. Like, this is like the best I can be. And it's just, I'm a mess and this is how I am and I'm not going to improve. Again, that's a tamasic way of thinking. But self-acceptance is acknowledging that this is who I am today and trying my best to be a little better tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Because think about it. If you hate yourself, why would you try to be better? It wouldn't make any sense, right? Wouldn't it? Like, I hate myself, so I'm a rascal. I've done so many things wrong. I can't accept myself. I'm just horrible. Like, how would that inspire your bhakti? It wouldn't. I mean, maybe you could figure out how to use it to inspire your bhakti, but generally, that's not going to inspire your bhakti. But what inspires it more is, I'm doing the best. This is where I'm at. This is who I am. And you know what happens when there's no self-acceptance? This is really interesting. You know what happens? You start having a battle between you and yourself. You ever had that battle between you and yourself? Like, I want to be up here, but I'm down here. So I don't like this self down here. So this ideal up here is angry with this self down here. So in between, there's contempt, there's anger, there's self-hatred. That's what is existing in that little difference between the ideal. So the ideal is screaming at the you who's like, well, you're just you. You're trying, but this is, you're doing your best. And the ideal's going, you idiot, you stupid failure, nonsense, rascal. Like, what's wrong with you? You should bury yourself in a hole. Don't show your face to the world. Something like that. So you become your own enemy. We say the mind is the enemy. There's a very good way we do this by letting the ideal smash us. Does that make sense? So we turn against ourselves and we become adversaries. The ideal that we're looking towards that we want to be, that we can't be today, becomes the enemy. And then it becomes a tamasic kind of consciousness. Whereas if I'm accepting gently, compassionately, as I would with everybody else who has trouble, when some devotee comes and tells me, I'm having really trouble getting up. You rascal idiot. You know what Prabhupada said, if you don't get up by 4 a.m, you're an animal. I don't want to see your ugly face if you don't get up at 4. Don't come back here again. You would never say that, I hope. Would you say that? I hope not. Someone in ISKCON might say that, but generally no. You would say, yeah, Prabhupada wants us to do this. It's difficult. It's, we're trying, just keep trying. It's like, it's not easy. I have trouble also. But the morning's so beautiful. And, chanting your rounds in the morning is so amazing. So let's just keep, that's what you would tell them. And what do you tell yourself? You stupid idiot, rascal, nonsense, useless, you're good for nothing. Isn't that interesting? Like, you treat others better than you treat yourself. You treat yourself. I have a slide. It says, sometimes you treat yourself like somebody you hate. Isn't it? You treat yourself. You could possibly treat yourself like somebody you hate, which is if you stand back and look at that and you think, that is not good, that is not healthy, I think anybody can understand that. So the problem is we throw philosophy in and then we get all confused, because I'm like, you have to be humble. And if you love yourself, it's selfish. And that's just psychology, modern age. And it's all nonsense. And, then you end up just going in the name of being chaste to our philosophy. That's sad, isn't it? In the name of being chaste to our Siddhanta, we just end up in Tamaguna. It doesn't make sense. If you're chaste to our Siddhanta, how did you end up in Tamaguna? It's like, I know where I'm going, don't tell me, No, Prabhu, you should turn left. No, I know I'm going to tell me. And and you end up in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, okay, maybe I should listen to you. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to clear up in this class. But the beauty of it is it's so relatable to so many of our experiences. That's why I did the class, because I had the same things I'm talking about, I've gone through myself a million times. Maybe some have gone through it worse, some not as bad, but we all go through it to some degree or another. And I always tried to make sense of it, because I realized if I don't make sense of it, this is going to be a pretty miserable path. It's got to be, there's got to be a way to make sense of this, to make sense of my failures and the bad qualities I have, the things I don't like about myself, without it discouraging me, so I can have the enthusiasm to continue, so I can purify myself, so I can transcend those qualities, purify those qualities. And as I was saying, but the beauty of it is when I bring in the things Prabhupada said about it, and I love some of them, it would be like, wow, I didn't know he said that. And sometimes that's all we need. We're thinking, no, yeah, but I'm bad and I should feel bad. And that a lot of that's just coming because that's how you were raised. But then when you hear stories about Prabhupada, how he accepted devotees even though they had struggles and broke principles, and how he told them, I appreciate your service and this, and like, oh, it just like opens your heart, like, oh, I can forgive myself. I had a godbrother who I had, because he's no longer alive, and he once said, if you have not forgiven somebody, you should forgive yourself for not having forgiven them. And then I thought, well, we should forgive ourselves for not having forgiven ourselves. That's like a sin. Not that forgive yourself so I can commit the sin again and again. That's not what we mean. But to hold yourself hostage to the mode of ignorance by not forgiving yourself perpetually, it doesn't help your bhakti. So what I'm trying to do in this class is show how these various mentalities that we've maybe taken our philosophy and interpreted with our psychology to work against us, work against us. And if it works against you, it's not Krishna conscious. And if it works against you, it's tamasic. And if something's tamasic, we don't want it. Even though you want to convince yourself, no, it's our philosophy. Tamaguna is not our philosophy, nowhere. We are supposed to at least be in sattva-guna. So there's a way of dealing with yourself and thinking that will be sattvic, and then that pushes you forward. So that's what we're going to be doing. So as I say, be there or be in Maya. It's your choice. I read a letter and Prabhupada, the devotee left and Prabhupada said, your choice, there's nothing I can do. Basically that, I mean, he said more, but basically that was your choice. What can I do? So I really, I feel so bad that I have to end and I can't chant with you, but class starts Friday and today's Monday. And we're up to like 99 and a half slides right now. And they're completely out of order. And and they don't all have graphics. And there's more slides to create. And I'm like stressing a bit. And I don't have the whole day. I'm seeing my sister every day. So at a certain point, I go out and I have to stop working. And so morning is the time my mind works really well in the morning. And since about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, my mind just in the evening, it's good for doing, just watching, listening to classes and having meetings where I don't have to think and listening to people talk. But and doing this work is like, it strains the brain. Every ounce of energy the brain has, it comes out in doing this work. It's really hard. So that's why I have to do it now. So I'm going to say goodbye to all of you. And if you have any questions or comments, we can say them for the next class. Thank you for coming, and Hare Krishna. And if I've finished everything by Wednesday, we'll have class. If I haven't, I don't know, I might disappear. And yeah, I break. This is 6:30 in the morning. This class starts. I get up like 2 or 3 and start working on this. And that time of day is like, I'm very productive, and it's hard to stop at 6 and get ready. So we'll see. Pray for me, everyone, that I have like my brain goes into like 7th gear and it just manifests everything amazingly and very quickly. And we'll be able to see you. Okay. Hare Krishna to all of you. As I say, don't do anything I wouldn't do. Hare Krishna.